Hello, everyone. Happy New Year, and welcome to the very first episode of my podcast, Behind the Bar, where I'll be discussing everything football, or should I say soccer, here in the United States, relating to Man United, the Premier League, European football, and international football at large. When I say football, I think I obviously mean soccer in Africa, in Europe, basically everywhere outside of the United States, it's called football. Of course, we know here in the US, America's sport is American football. So I'll be interchanging between soccer and football. So please do bear with me. Anyway, let's get right into it. Is Man United in a relegation battle? Sadly, the answer is yes. I started following United in the 90s during the era of the uh, right after the Busby Babes, and then the class of '96 with the Beckhams, the Scholes, Nicky Butts, the Neville brothers. I don't know if you guys can see that, but that's actually the class of '92 poster right there, signed by all the players. Um, I just say that to say that I've been an avid follower of Man United for many years, and I must say that this is the worst. Well, it's not just me saying it. I think the stats say it as well, right? In the 30 years of the Premier League's existence, this is the worst start and the worst position that Man United currently find ourselves in. I think it's 14th in the table, 5 to 7 points above the relegation zone. I never thought that I'd be saying this, having watched the glory years with Sir Alex, with the treble and winning titles on titles on titles. But now the conversation is, are we in a relegation zone? I think the reality is yes. And such a stark contrast when you look at where we were as a team under Eric Ten Hag just 18 months ago, finishing third, having won the League Cup, the Carabao Cup, and of course last season finished eighth, not where we wanted to be, but still winning the FA Cup, beating Man City, the then treble holders. So quite like I said, a stark contrast figuring where the team was 18 months ago to where we are now with just a few points above the relegation zone. Of course, there's a lot for new coach Ruben Amorim to digest over these last couple of months that he's been in charge. Um, Nothing has worked. I mean, just to put it plainly, it's been one disaster after the other. Of course, the issue started with Sir Marcus Rashford. Um, Barely 3 weeks into Amorim's tenure, essentially putting in a transfer request. And then behind the scenes, you have a brand new coach trying to introduce a brand new system, brand new formation halfway through the season. And I think if we have to point the finger at anyone, it has to be Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos. If we look at their ownership, which coincidentally, it's just been a year since they took over, right? I think it was December 2023. And in that year, when they took over, we've seen the team just be in shambles. I mean, start off in the summer after that FA Cup win that I just referenced. They flirted with every coach that would take their call around Europe, embarrassing Eric Ten Hag in the process, undermining his authority, and then ultimately deciding that they were going to stick with him to start the season. And barely 3 months in, they decide to fire him. Let's take a few steps back. if we go beyond the coach and the team, we've heard about the best in class that they were going to be hiring in this new Man United structure, from a sporting director, Omar Barada, the new CEO, Dan Ashworth, who they had to put on gardening leave, pay millions and millions of pounds to Newcastle just to get him out of his contract, only to fire him less than 2 months into the job. Okay, maybe a little bit more than 2 months. I think he started in July. So 4 to 6 months in. That's crazy. That is crazy. I mean, think about it. You waited for this guy for months. You shelled out millions and millions of dollars, of pounds, dollars, whatever, all while having company-wide cuts throughout the organization, right? They let go of Sir Alex Ferguson. I mean, we've seen reports of they cut the Christmas party off, they cut gifts, they fired thousands of people. So clearly, saving money is a priority for Ineos and Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And so to make these what seem like spontaneous, off the cuff decisions with millions at stake, very troubling signs, if I'm being honest, from what we're seeing from the new ownership. It's almost like a Glazers 2.0, right? Just sort of random decision making from the coach to Dan Ashworth. And I think it's worth asking the question, is Ruben Amorim's job safe? According to Gary Neville, there's certainly some questions that need to be asked in that regard as we sink lower down the league table. I think the coming weeks are going to dictate what happens and how that goes. Of course, we have the Liverpool game next, coming off of a loss to Newcastle. Prior to that, lost to Wolves. Prior to that, lost to Tottenham in the League Cup. Prior to that, lost to Nottingham Forest in the Premier League. So the L's are stacking up, right? And it's going to get to a point where Man United is in the relegation zone and Ineos are going to be forced to make a decision. Do they stick with this new coach in Ruben Amorim, who they've also paid millions of pounds to get out of his contract at Sporting Lisbon, or do they persist, even in the face of relegation? It's a lot of questions, and I think over the next months, we'll find answers to these. So that leads me to the next topic of conversation, which is the very next game against Liverpool this Sunday at Anfield against the league toppers, who are really just blowing away everyone in the Premier League outside of, I think, Nottingham Forest, the only team that has beaten them outright at home, at the crib. And so it's not looking good. It's not looking good at all. But I think that it's going to be interesting to see if Ruben Amorim sticks with his principles, with his formation, with three at the back, the wing backs, the two pivots, two number 10s, and then, of course, up top with the striker. Not a lot of optimism going into this game. To be fair, it's been that way these last few weeks. But let's see who we think is going to start in this game. So, of course, Andre Onana gets the start. I don't think Bayern has a shot at playing any more games this season after what we saw in the League Cup against Tottenham with the Olympico goal that he conceded. Of course, Andre Onana conceded the same Olympico goal against Wolves to Marcus Cunha, who hopefully we're looking at in the January transfer window, but that's a completely different conversation for a completely different episode. So Onana between the sticks, the three at the back. I think I mean, the team has two left-sided defensive players in the squad, right? It's Martinez, Licha, and Malacia, who's just come back from what feels like a 2-year injury layoff. So I think it's safe to say that we will see Martinez start on that left center back role. At the center back, I think we'll see De Ligt. I think in the early parts of the season under Ten Hag, he was one of the most consistent players that we saw in the squad alongside Nus Mazraoui. And when he was out ill over the last few weeks, I think we saw how much we missed him in that back line, just the calm that he brings to the back line, being able to organize the players around him, just instill some confidence in that back line. So I think De Ligt will fill that role. And at the right center back, I think we must go with Lenny Euro, right? Amorim has talked about the lack of athleticism in the team, the lack of physicality in the team. And I think that's two of the boxes that Euro checks quite easily, right? He's 6'3", 19 years old. He's athletic, he's strong, he's physical, he's good on the ball. And against Liverpool, we're going to need our best defenders. So Lenny Euro for me at the right center back. Now the wing backs, this is where it kind of gets a little tricky because there really aren't any options, right? There's no left-sided defenders, as I've just mentioned. And so you have a right-sided player in Dalot who has played on that side really since last season, right? This is a recurring theme we're seeing second season running where we have no left-sided defender. And again, back to Ineos and their recruiting. Certainly a lot of questions I think need to be placed at their doorstep. But again, Dalot has had a stinker this season. I mean, he's been awful. I must say, he's been really bad. And I don't blame him. He's playing out of position. That's not his strength. He doesn't have a left foot. He always wants to come back in on the right. And we've seen teams actually target him to great effect. And we're seeing that on the opposite side now with Mazraoui. You know, he started off the season in excellent form, consistent 7.5, 8 out of 10 performances. And I think he's just getting burnt out, right? He's playing every single game, every single minute, and it's starting to take his toll. He's had horrible games over the last few weeks. Against Nottingham Forest, conceded the penalty. And then he's just been a downward spiral since then. And to be fair, along with the rest of the team, but if there's anyone that can hold their head up high this season, it probably is Mazraoui. So we'll give him a little bit of slack, just considering that he has been probably the most consistent player all season, apart from the last 2 to 3 games. But again, a lack of options just means that he's going to start. And I don't think we can afford to go with wingbacks, traditional wingers as wingbacks in this game, because again, we're playing Liverpool at Anfield. In the pivot, thankfully, the Uruguayan Manuel Ugarte is back from suspension, having racked up 5 yellow cards through the first part of the season. So he served his 1-ban automatic suspension against Newcastle, the Newcastle game he missed. So he'll be coming right back into the midfield alongside Kobbie Mainoo, right? From what we saw against Newcastle with Casemiro and Christian Eriksen, I think that's the last time that we should ever see those two in the pivot, in the midfield for Man United, period. Just don't want to see that pivot again. There's no legs, no athleticism, right? No physicality. Basically everything that we need, they lack. So I think Mainoo and Ugarte, I think is how it's pronounced. Certainly the best 2 options there. And the 2 number 10s, Bruno Fernandes is also back from suspension, having received that red card, his 3rd red card this season as a captain, which is woeful, if we're going to be honest. But he comes back in the team, and I think the team absolutely needs him. I mean, you could see against Newcastle, right? No one wanted the ball. No one wanted to take responsibility. It was passing back, passing back. No one wanted to take the ball and make something happen. And for all of Fernandez's, for all of the negative things, I would say about Fernandez, whether it's the petulance, um, the moaning, the silly fouls that he gives, the reckless passes, the Hollywood passes that tends to give the ball away and put the team in awkward position. For all of those things we can say about him, one thing that we know about Bruno, one, he's going to give 100% every single second he's on the pitch. And two, he's not scared. He wants the ball. He wants to take the risk. He wants to get the team up front. And I think we sorely missed that in that last home game against Newcastle. So certainly looking forward to seeing Bruno back in the team in the number 10 alongside our player of the season so far, Ahmad. And I was a big fan of Eric Ten Hag. I'll put my hand up right now. I was not Eric Ten Hag out. I just wasn't. But if there is one crime that Eric Ten Hag committed, was not playing Ahmad. I think it's been well documented, so I'm not going to beat a dead horse. But I think he'll take that spot. And then, of course, up top, it's going to be Rasmus Højlund, our Scandinavian striker. Having taken Joshua Zirkzee, off at halftime, he took him off, I think it was the 30th minute in the first half. He didn't even make it to halftime. Of course, we saw that he went straight down the tunnel. I think he probably had a Ronaldo moment, right? Remember when Ronaldo was taking off, went down the tunnel and took a lot of heat for that? I think Joshua Zirkzee had a moment where he was just pissed off, put his jacket on, went to the locker room, and then a light bulb moment. He remembered the Ronaldo situation. Let me not ostracize myself more than I already have with my performances with the fans. And he rightfully came back out and got back on the bench. But that's the team I would go with. I think that it's going to be a tough game. I think this is the game that we probably are going to see Amorim change his tactics slightly. Probably sit in a low block and just try to soak up pressure and hit Liverpool on the counterattack. It's probably our best chance of getting anything out of the game. And it's amazing to think, like I said, in Eric Ten Hag's first season, if you recall, after those 2 losses to start the season, he reverted from his philosophy and went pragmatic, and that worked for him, right? De Gea stopped passing from the back. We started going long, and he started playing pragmatic, practical football. So it's going to be interesting to see how long Ruben Amorim can hold on to his philosophies, can hold on to his personality, and not change as the team sinks closer to that relegation zone. Score prediction. I'm gonna go with a 3-1 to Liverpool. As much as I hate to do that, I just don't see how we can go in there and get a win. If I'm being completely honest, I'm not trying to be negative, but I don't want to come on here and not be honest about how I really feel the game is going to go. So I think when it sit back, frustrate them like we did Arsenal in the first half of the game. But I think ultimately when you're looking at Mo Salah and that Liverpool attack against that Man United defense that's conceded, 20 goals under Amorim so far, it's hard to see any other result. But I'm hoping for a draw. If you offered me a draw, I'll take it right this second. But I'm afraid I'm predicting a 3-1 win to Liverpool. Um, this has been fun. This has been great. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please subscribe. I'll be releasing an episode every single week. Behind the Bar. I'm your host, Temi Tayo. Thank you. Make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Cheers.